Eat me, Anonymous. Much like a stopped clock, even Hollywood occasionally gets it right. Despite their best efforts, sometimes they will still manage to hobble their way across the old infinite monkey. Every here and there, the land of dreams will excrete a little genre nugget that defies all odds, germinating in the cold ground until it becomes a gem. Like the men who sought their fortune in the great Western gold rush, today we too will pan the icy waters in search of our own little reward. Join us, won't you? And remember, if you get hungry, there's plenty of meat to go around. It's Loathsome Things, a horror movie podcast. And I am John, and with me as always is my co-host Josh. Josh, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing excellent. That might be the best intro we've ever had on this show. That was exquisite, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. I'm just basking in the glow of that. That was awesome, and so very thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm anticipating our biannual cold snap that renders the state unfunctional. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like cold
Kills
weather.
People.
Yeah, I like cold weather. I don't like freezing in my home. So.
Yes. What is this, all of this meat stuff that you're talking about, Mr. Eat Me Anonymous?
Well, as it turns out, we are covering this week a little Hollywood film from 1999 directed by Antonia Bird. The film is Ravenous, and it is a horror comedy.
Describe it.
I guess you would say, yeah, a Western horror comedy based on the Donner Party and Alfred Packer, who was a mythological, well, he's a real guy, but there was kind of a myth about him eating 5 dudes in Colorado back in the day. And
inspired the team name for the Green Bay Packers.
Yes. This movie ties in oddly with a book that I just finished called The Hunger by Alma Katsu, which is horror novel, of course, based on the Donner Party, and it's very similar to Ravenous in the sense that they, well, we'll get into it, because you've already watched the movie, so you know where we're going anyway.
That's true.
Yeah, it also reminded me of The Society of Snow, which is the movie about the Uruguayan rugby team that crashed in the Andes back in the 70s, and the survivors had to resort to eating the dead in order to live, and all that stuff.
Is that what that movie is about? Oh
yes.
My god!
It's so good. It's really good.
I've been seeing that trailer automatically play in my Netflix before I canceled it. Now it's like, wow, they just make it look so boring. I had no idea it was about that.
It's actually really good and pretty accurate. I mean, if you compare the snapshots they're taking, like one guy's taking snapshots to preserve it, so in case they survive, they have something to remember their wonderful experience of eating people. And so he takes a bunch of snapshots in the movie, and then at the end of the movie, you see some of those snapshots, and they're exactly, they staged them perfectly. It's crazy, like all the actors, are like doing their thing, and then the guy's like, hey, I'm going to take a picture, and they all kind of stop and look at the camera. It's just like the pictures. It's crazy.
Holy crap, that's awesome.
It's a great movie, yeah.
One day when I get Netflix again, I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, so I don't know why. I guess I'll be eating human flesh soon, since that's been swirling around in my life for some reason. What are you going to do?
I hear it's tasty.
Yeah, I guess it's because the power will go out and we'll run out of food, and we'll have to eat the dead. Yeah.
The good news is also here in America, that the meat will be very well marbled.
Yeah, that's right. Wonderful veins of fat.
It's just, we fatten them up, keep them docile, make them stand still for a long time. That's good, tender, marbled meat.
Them's good eating.
All right, let's go through the things. Antonia Bird was primarily a British TV director, but the 90s saw Bird break out into the world of theatrical release cinema with such hits as Mad Love, a rom-com starring Drew Barrymore and Chris O'Donnell. This was her final theatrically released film, though she continued to direct and produce until her untimely death on the 24th of October 2013 at the hands of Antonia Cat.
Yeah, she that's right. She had cancer, I think. Yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate. But yeah, she got signed on to this movie because the guy that was originally set up to be the director, who, let's see, his name was like Shukaflok Thorkensnarch.
He's Macedonian.
That's right. He was sacked after 2 weeks. And then Robert Carlyle, who, had signed on to do this, has done a lot of work with Antonia Bird. So he recommended her. And it was a great pick. I mean, she really did a great job. So Robert Carlyle is in this movie, who you, I'm sure, remember from Trainspotting and 28 Weeks Later, and of course, The Full Monty.
And all 156 episodes of Once Upon a Time in which he played Rumpelstiltskin.
Incredible. I love this dude. He's great, and he's fucking, like, at his best in this movie. He's just gleefully being horrible. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh man, that scene that we're gonna get to outside of the cave where he's just getting after it. I don't know how he tapped into that, but it was probably cocaine.
Yeah, that would be a safe bet. The movie also stars Guy Pearce as Captain John Boyd. Of course, you guys know him from Memento, L.A. Confidential. He played Wayland in the Alien Covenant and Prometheus movies. You probably wouldn't recognize him, as he was wearing a lot of rubber. And he was also in a movie by an Australian director named John Hillcoat called The Proposition, which was written by Nick Cave, the musician. That movie is awesome. It's like an Australian Western. That's a really good movie that a lot of people don't know about. I would highly recommend that one.
Nice.
Who else is in this thing? Let's see.
We've got David Courtney Cox Arquette and Jeffrey, the principal from Ferris Bueller Jones.
Yep, that's right. Jeremy Davies, who was in Lost and Saving Private Ryan and American Gods. Bunch of good things.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of actors in here that made me go, where do I know that guy from? And then whenever I looked up where I knew that guy from, I was like, oh, that's disappointing.
I know, it's like Arquette. I was like, oh, the Scream franchise. Great. And then, I was like, oh, he was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure? He must have been like 12. And he was in...
Wow!
Yeah, he was in Bone Tomahawk. Bone Tomahawk was great. And
yeah, I liked that.
Well, it was good. I don't know if it was great, but it was good. And he was also in Bar Wrestling 38. I don't. Apparently, he's like a wrestling guy.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, because he decided that he was going to get into brutal fighting, which is weird because he is married to Courtney Cox, and on the series Friends, she ends up in a relationship with a dude that gets into MMA and gets his ass handed to him all the time. So it was like, oh, art imitates art, or something.
I like David Arquette because he's probably I don't know, the least talented of the well-known Arquette clan, which includes Rosanna Arquette, who was the subject of the absolutely delightful Toto song, and Patricia Arquette, who was in a bunch of stuff that I forget the name of, but she's pretty cool. I like her a lot. And then, of course, their sibling, I forget what her name was, born male, transitioned over to Alexis Arquette. And
I had no idea.
I think, if I remember correctly, she's passed away. She died some horrible way. So,
Jesus.
Rest in peace to that Arquette. And,
Rip.
Oh, by the way, Jeffrey Jones, in case you don't know, is also known for getting arrested and convicted of taking sexual photos of a 14-year-old.
Hey!
Thanks so much for ruining that dude, because he's a lot of fun on screen, not so much fun off screen.
No! Man, could you imagine getting invited to his house and he's like, hey, I've got something I want to show you.
Are you into photography?
Okay.
I do like photography, Jeffrey.
I consider it a hobby.
In true Hollywood fashion, he's still around. So
Yeah, of course, it's fine.
the music was done by Michael Nyman and Damon Albarn from Blur. And, Albarn is one of those guys who, he's almost like a cipher. Like Blur is the infamous Britpop band that could go anywhere from brilliant to unbearable. And, and he's the guy that basically masterminded the whole Gorillaz project. And,
nice.
And he does some really cool, soundtrack music. And then Michael Nyman did he's done a bunch of stuff. He did the piano and a bunch of crap. So the soundtrack's great. The music is...
Oh, man.
Music's hilarious. Like it's, there's scenes that probably wouldn't be particularly funny, but the music just makes it hilarious. I don't know. This movie is a movie that I think Hollywood just finally was like, just make the fucking thing and let's get it over with. And it didn't really make any money, but it's really grown into I think a well-deserved cult classic status. I love this movie. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it. And I'm so glad it was made, and the heck that Hollywood actually let it happen, because they have a tendency to take a shit on cool stuff.
Yeah, this movie's wild. I would recommend everyone go read the Wikipedia page for this, because the facts surrounding it are wild. The cool trivia is awesome, including, I think you missed one. Antonia Bird was actually the third director for this movie.
Is that right? Yeah. She was the third.
Yeah, the first guy was there for 2 weeks and he was complaining and quit, and she's even gone on record as saying that, oh no, it wasn't that guy's fault. What's going on with this movie is complete shit. It was enough that she was like, no, I'm done with doing Hollywood theatrical movies. I'm going to go back to my comfort zone of making 4 British TV movies. This was it for her. And apparently the filming conditions were terrible, and the weird level of Hollywood studio direct control on everything was terrible. The script was one of 3 scripts that the dude that wrote it had written in a week, and it was just everything was terrible, but they managed to piece it together. But also, Antonia Bird, I don't believe is a huge fan of this, or was a huge fan of the soundtrack, because a lot of the stuff that they did around that, they added in later, after she was done with the project, and then when she watched the movie, she was like, wow, they made it real different. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I guess she might have been going for a more kind of somber vibe, and they gave it this kind of zany carnival sound to it. But it for someone who wasn't involved in the project and has it just accepts it at face value, I think the music's fantastic.
Oh man, yeah, that banjo riff, it's really straightforward and basic, but it just feels like it's building up to something. You're like, oh man, yeah, this is about to get really good. And then they're just like, and now some accordion accompaniment, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is nice too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they shot this movie in Slovakia, probably to save money, and I'm sure they cut God knows how many corners. But again, it's still a Hollywood movie. It's got Hollywood production values. The gore effects are fantastic, man. We'll get into all that, but it's it looks like they look like they're miserable making this movie, because it's cold as shit. You can just tell.
Yeah, that was one of the original director's complaints was about how much dust was on the costumes. He was like, this is disgusting.
It's perfect though. They're out in the they're supposed to be fighting the Mexican-American War in the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah.
It's pretty sure. I don't think there were any laundromats around there, so I'm an idiot.
That's good. All right, let's.
You ever tell a joke and think I probably didn't need to tell that one?
Oh, all the time. Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
My colleagues at work know that if I had a magic spell that I could cast at any moment, it would be the pretend Josh didn't say that joke or spell. Forget a Rosa.
Sweet. Nice.
All right, let's get into it. All right.
Yes.
The movie starts off. We've got Captain John Boyd. He's at a ceremony where he is being honored for single-handedly infiltrating the enemy lines and securing victory in battle. Then everyone gets down to eating undercooked steaks, and he pukes because the sight of bloody meat just does not agree with him. Then we get flashbacks. They're interspersed, but yeah. Boyd, we find out, played dead during, he just fell down, got down and pretended to be dead in the middle of the battle, and then was loaded up into a cart of dead bodies where he was on the bottom, and blood from his friends trickled down his face and into his mouth as he was pretending to be dead. Then he said something had changed, and then he Sergeant Yorked the whole situation and defeated the entire Mexican army that was stationed here. Single-handed victory. But apparently he then told the generals and whatever about this, and they're like, "You're no hero! Go to California!" And so he does. He arrives at what can only be called Fort Shithole in the wintry Sierra Nevadas, meets Colonel 14-year-old Photography Hart, and who runs through the crew. You've got Private Religious Idiot, Major Drunk, Private Lunatic Warrior, a silent indigenous woman named Martha and her brother, and Private Pothead Arquette.
Her brother Joseph Running Fox, played by Joseph Running Fox.
Yeah. Very authentic dude. That's the entire thing. So they run a skeleton crew during the winter because no one goes there. They make lots of jokes about welcome to sunny California. There's some weird tone stuff going on through here. There's a lot of random, Mel Brooks grade sound effects that get, popped into shots. Also, you can tell that they, dub stuffed in post where they're like, you know what, we want him to say an extra little funny thing here, so why don't we just record him saying that funny thing while his back is turned to the camera and stuff like that. So, this one, I would say the headphones are worth it for the music, but it also, whenever they do stuff like that, it takes you out, and in those situations, it's better on the TV.
Yeah.
All of these things are going on. Outside, a stranger is seen collapsing in the snow. They bring him in. They dunk him in hot water. They have a huge pot of, human... To boil a human pot of water that they dunk him in, and then they tuck him into bed near the fire. He wakes up the next morning and introduces himself as Calhoun. He tells the story of his Oregon Donner Trail party, sheltering in a cave. He says they ate the horses, they ate his dog, then they ate their belts and their shoes, and when the first one died of hunger, they cooked and ate his legs. Then the leader, one Colonel Ives, started killing and eating everyone. Calhoun then fled and abandoned a woman to the colonel's predations, and he's like, I'm such a coward. And then Indigidude shows up. He's got a placemat, a pelt that has a picture of a wendigo on it. He tells them about the wendigo, tells them that it's the insatiable monster that a man becomes when he eats human flesh, and then everyone that's still there sets out to go save the damsel from the villain, that is everyone except Pothead, Arquette, and Martha, because they have previously gone into town for groceries.
Yeah, they need to get batteries for their camera or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you kind of see some of the weaknesses in the script here. I mean, there's when Joseph, who's the native, when Joseph, he just whips out his Wendigo rug or whatever. That's just something he carries with him. So obviously he doesn't even really explain too much. He just basically is giving the audience the basics of what a Wendigo is.
Yeah.
And you horror fans already know that. Okay. And so, when they take off, why does this fucking guy go with them when he's basically saying there's a mythological creature out there that eats human flesh for their life force or whatever? And then he's like, So I think I'll join you on this trip. Like, dude, what the fuck? Okay.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and they leave the base abandoned of anyone except, of course, for Major Knox, who is drunk and can't go anywhere.
Right. And David Arquette and the lady named Martha hold down the fort. Literally.
Well, they're not even there. They've left. They're
Oh, that's right. They're gone. It's just Knox, right?
It's just Knox. He is literally holding down the literal fort, and he is drunk.
Knox and socks. Okay. And so they head off. They eventually get to a point where they make camp. They're out in the mountains. Toffler is writing his hymn while they're camped out. It's really weird because Jeremy Davies is really fucking weird. And the next morning they're off. They're up in the mountains again. They stop for a bourbon break because Hart needs bourbon. And Boyd asks Calhoun.
Calhoun.
I don't know why they put a Q in his name, but his name is Calhoun. Anyways, he is talking to Calhoun, and he's asking him about his experience, like, eating a dude. And curious if it may have, changed him, maybe increased his strength, his vigor, or anything like that. Did you get
bigger boners afterward?
Yeah, it's just anything I should be looking forward to. I mean, hypothetically.
Yeah.
And I love his response where he says some stuff, and then he says, I seem to remember a certain virility.
He's so good. He is so
amazing.
Good. Robert Carlyle is a treasure, and I don't know why he's not a bigger deal.
God, no kidding. Toffler goes off a little bit on his own, runs up over to the top of like a rock outcropping and shouts down, I found a bone! And then he slips and falls on the rocks, fucks himself up really bad. Blondie, who is called Reich, and I think it's absolutely. Well, this is such. I'm not going to go there. It's too stupid. Anyways, Blondie runs over to like check on him, and he's like, he's okay, and then of course he's not okay. He's fucked himself up really bad. So back at the camp, Toffler is begging, like screaming for bourbon now, and they're tending to his wounds. Boyd comes in, brings the bourbon. He sees him, like Toffler, all bleeding, and he's like, ugh, like cringing from the blood. I wonder why. He's like, maybe he's probably just scared of blood. Anyways, so in the middle of the night, Toffler freaks out, and he claims that Calhoun was licking him. Yeah. But he wakes up to Calhoun licking him.
Of blood on his lip.
A little bit of blood on his lip, and he's like, no, you have to understand. I was having a nightmare. It's like, I've had a lot of nightmares, dude. I never did that. So he insists that he should be restrained. It's because he doesn't want to lick anybody else. Yeah. So the next day they're back out at it. They're trekking again, and we hear Joseph Running Fox mutter under his breath to somebody, "Wendigo." Yeah, we get it, dude. Thanks. So they come to Calhoun's cave.
Yeah.
And this is the place where Calhoun had talked about where all this crazy shit went down, and he left Mrs. whatever her name was with I forget the guy he left there.
Colonel
Ives that he left?
Yeah.
So anyways, at the cave he freaks the fuck out. Like he doesn't want to enter the cave. It's he's acting terrified. So the gang posts up, and then they're calling out for the woman her name's Miss McCready. There's other like yelling into the entrance of the cave. There's no response. So Hart sends Boyd and Reich into the cave to go, figure out what the fuck's going on. So they get pretty deep into the cave, and they find some blood and a big hole in the ground. There's like in the rock, basically like a big hole carved. So Reich climbs down the rope that they have set up there into basically another cavern. Meanwhile, back outside, Calhoun is now basically hyperventilating and like waving his arms around, and it's fucking crazy. I mean, he's just like he's giving such a great performance, freaking out and freaking everyone else out, especially Toffler, who's right there by him, I guess. And Hart is like calling out for Boyd and Reich to come back. Down in the cavern, meanwhile, Reich finds a bunch of like personal effects and two like bones and human carcasses hanging upside down. They're all gross looking. They have looks like gelatinous body fat stuck to the bones. It's really gross.
Yeah.
He realizes that it's a trap, drops his oil lamp, which starts a fire, which amounts to nothing, and then climbs up the rope, and they're rushing out to the mouth of the cave to warn the others that Calhoun killed everyone. Everyone. No one's left. Calhoun, in the meantime, is now digging in the dirt like a dog, like frantically digging in the dirt with his front hands, and he digs something out of the ground. We don't see what it is. Turns out it's a big Bowie knife, which he runs up and stabs Hart right in the gut. And this is the first of many gut stabs in this movie. He's like running the knife up his. It's like he's just making it hurt as much as possible. It's great.
Really getting it.
Joseph. Yeah, Joseph Running Fox throws his hatchet, but instead of hitting Calhoun, he hits Hart right in the back, which is great. Calhoun is just basically guts Hart, kills Joseph, takes the gun away, and it takes a gun and tries to shoot Toffler, but as it turns out, the gun is empty. So then he just casually kind of takes his cloak off and looks at Toffler and goes, "Run." And they're off to festive carnival music. Like running into the woods shenanigans. Boyd tries to tend to Hart, who's basically dead. He's dying very close to death. Reich is like, leave him, we can't do anything. And they take off after these guys. They eventually come across Toffler, who has been eviscerated and is laying on the ground. And so they take off again to go find Calhoun. They're going to try and kill him, of course. They arrive at like a plateau, and Boyd is like suddenly like, I want to go back, which again didn't really amount to anything. That's fine. Reich, meanwhile, gets a knife in the chest from Ives, of course, ends up falling off this little cliff edge right where they are, down into the whatever. Boyd shoots Calhoun right in the chest, and he looks like he's down for the count. He's on the ground, and then he starts, and then he just sits up, bolt up, laughing, blood on his mouth, like coming out of his mouth. It's great. They have a face-off on the plateau. Boyd realizes he's basically cornered. He's getting backed up, and so he decides to jump, which it's quite a fall.
Yeah.
And then when he gets to the bottom, he falls through like 15 pine trees or whatever. It's just like it's like this montage of pine tree falling that never seems to end. Then he finally lands on like this incline, and he starts rolling. He rolls into Reich's body, and then the two of them roll all the way down and land in this bloody heap on the ground. And it's nice and quiet for a second, It's like, wow, that was crazy. And all of a sudden, Reich jumps up and jumps awake and tries to strangle Boyd to death, and then dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Calhoun watches all of this from the cliff edge and then kind of goes, and then walks away. Boyd is pretty badly hurt, and he's in a lot of pain. His leg is really fucked up. He can't even get up. Calhoun is down at the bottom now. He's climbed his way down, I guess, and he's looking for them. Misses them. Boyd passes out, wakes up in the middle of the night, and he's trying to tend to his leg. It's kind of gross. You don't see it, but you hear these horrible sound effects. Calhoun gets Toppler's corpse and drags it into the cave, and then he's basically eating him like by the riverside and stuff. We're kind of jumping back and forth between day and night, which is kind of weird. Boyd basically eats Reich in order to stay alive, and so it's like, I don't know. There's the whole night and day thing kind of made me think, as in other spots, that stuff was cut out and just cut out like piecemeal. So it, like, why is it suddenly day for Ives or whatever his name is? Calhoun. Why is it suddenly day for him, but it's night still for whatever?
Yeah. So it's interspersed with all of these different shots of the moon, and we're watching the face of the moon change. So it's implying that this is over the course of many days, or I'm sorry, many moons passing. But like,
yeah, that's a good point.
It just all looks like one shot of, Calhoun eating by the river and one shot of him in the, cave. Or it doesn't do a great job of what it's doing, but yeah. It's
shots like that where you really can kind of get the feel that this was at times was a little hackneyed, even though talk about making the best out of it.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, it doesn't. See, that's the thing, is it doesn't really matter how long he was in the pit. What we get is that he's going crazy while he's in there, and then we get that Calhoun's eating people. It's whatever. So yeah, he's eating the crazy guy, and then because that lets him heal or whatever, the change occurs. He crawls out of his piney pit and hikes through the snow back to Fort Shithole, where he has we don't really see. It's very strange. We know that he makes a report, like, here's everything that I saw. He asks Martha how to stop the wendigo. She's not happy with him, because he didn't protect her brother from death or whatever. And she's like, the wendigo only takes, he never gives, so to stop the wendigo, you must die. Doesn't make any sense, but it's fine.
No.
And the general from earlier, the disappointed general from earlier, is there. He's like, yeah, fuck you, why don't you change your story? Whatever. Here's your new colonel. And the new colonel that's gonna take over command of Fort Shithole is there. It's Colonel Ives, which is Calhoun. And Boyd collapses at the sight of him. And Colonel Ives is totally upgraded his facial hair game. He now has super epic mustache, like perfectly coiffed. He's looking sleek. Boyd is like, hey, that's the guy. Why won't anyone believe me that that's the guy? And it turns out that the only person that's alive that saw Calhoun was Knox. And Knox was like, I don't know. So, great.
Fucking Knox.
They look for the gunshot wound because at some point he shot Calhoun outside of the cave. It's not there. And then we get this shot of Boyd staring at David Arquette outside the window, and he just fantasizes about going up and killing him and eating him while David Arquette is laughing. It's very strange.
It is.
Ives and Boyd confront each other outside, where Ives admits to being Calhoun, and explains his whole transition and how he's like, oh yeah, well, I started and then it was all good, but at first I couldn't, drink blood without vomiting, but now I'm like real strong and it's all good. And Boyd attacks Ives. Martha saves him. There's all of this stuff. There's this tension trying to be built up with Private Pothead and Martha knowing that Boyd wants to kill Ives, and them being all on edge, and Boyd being on edge, and everyone's on edge basically except for Knox and Ives. It's very strange, but yeah, it all culminates into this thing where Boyd tries to kill Ives, and so then Knox instructs Martha to go get David Arquette, and the two of them together need to put Boyd under arrest. And then she can't find Pothead anywhere. Looking around, she goes into the stable, and it turns out that all of the horses have been killed and butchered, and just bits of their body are like scattered around. And she goes to report that to Knox, and then blood starts dripping on her face, and they find there's David Arquette's body is just on the fucking rafter of their shit fort. And then it turns so they arrest him. They assume it was him. There's this great shot where Knox comes into Martha's teepee, because even though they're in a fort, they live in a teepee inside the fort. It's fine. And he's like, look, there's all the horses are gone, and we need to go to the other fort and get the general so that he can do reinforcements so that we can transfer Boyd to an actual military prison. So someone's going to have to go on foot to the other fort. Any volunteers? And so she's like, yeah. And so she gets out of there. She leaves to go get the general. And, Knox is drunk. Ives is cooking a stew, and Knox is like, oh, can I help with that? And Ives is like, yeah, perhaps you can contribute later. And there's a whole business with one of the sabers on the wall is missing. The whole time Boyd is like, in the other room. Then we see Major Drunk come in. He's like, hey, how'd that door get open? He goes to close the door, and a shadow falls over him on the screen, and then we hear a shink, and then all of a sudden he's gone. He has been killed, possibly with a saber.
Shink. Of course, they want you to think that it's Ives, but it's not. Shock! It's Hart. Hart is back. He, in another one of those moments in the movie that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because he should have died, but I guess he somehow managed to hang on just long enough to wendigize.
Yeah.
And so he's back. He kills Knox. He killed Knox. Turns out he killed Cleves and the horses as well. He's so flippant about everything. It's so great. He tells his story about, how he basically is now part of Ives' group of wendigites. I don't know.
Yeah.
He tells Boyd that, he wants to bring him into the fold, and gives him this whole song and dance, which, of course goes nowhere. But then they go and they meet up with Ives, who is basically just hacking up Knox for the stew.
Yeah.
And it's so great. Ives tells Boyd about how all these people are going to head west, and how, this will allow Ives and his clan or whatever to feed just selectively. They don't want to eat everybody, because there's families involved. He wants to bring Boyd and I think it's General Slauson along with him to build a home that they need to have out in the country, in a country that is, quote, consuming all it can, and we merely follow.
Nice.
Which is pretty brilliant. Boyd refuses to join Ives. He's not having it. He's just like, fuck you, whatever. So Ives stabs him in the gut, as per normal.
Yeah.
We cut to night. Hart is feeding the gang the Knox stew. Ives lets Boyd just kind of suffer and basically lays it out for him. Like, well, you can sit there and bleed to death, or you can eat this Knox stew. Live or die. And he eats the stew. I guess he decides that he probably, I don't know, maybe wants to fight Ives some more. Who can say? Anyways, so they're getting ready. The arrival of the general is imminent, and Hart brings Boyd more stew and tells him, to eat up or whatever. And Boyd and Hart have another talk about bullshit, and then Boyd is like, let me go, Hart. I'm gonna kill Ives or whatever. So Hart unchains him, tells him to take the knife, and asks Boyd to kill him. After just talking about how awesome it is to be a Wendigo and how liberating it is and all this stuff, and then he's like, kill me. So he kills him. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it was very out of nowhere. It was like, oh, yeah. Okay.
At least show one 10-second scene of Hart being conflicted about, what he, but no, he's just into it, and then he wants to be killed, so he gets killed. Ives sees this through the window while the blood's splashing across the glass. And he starts fighting with Boyd. And they basically immediately, like, Ives immediately, like, breaks off and hides somewhere. He's doing, like, sneaky wendigo, like, from the camera. Ives is wandering around trying to find him. It's kind of dumb. And then we see Ives. He's inside now. He's standing in front of the fire. He's painted a cross on his forehead in blood. And he's heading out to now confront Boyd because now it's on. And they start fighting. And they stab each other. They have a headbutt off. It's just like a bunch of headbutting. And Boyd picks up a log and is smashing Ives with it, just bashing him over the head with it.
It's pretty fucking badass,
It's a great fight. It's a great fight. Yeah. It's really ridiculous. There's some more stabby. That saber thing, it's like a trident saber or something, ends up in Boyd's back. He manages to get away because the roof ends up collapsing on Ives from, this place is just shit. So Ives goes inside. Boyd goes inside. Ives ends up getting up and, follows him inside. They have a face-off inside the hut or whatever it is. Ives takes the stabby sword thing out of Boyd's back, tosses it aside. They start to wrestle, and Boyd basically tricks Ives into, like, throwing him, the both of them basically, into this gigantic bear trap that looks like Megalodon jaws or something. He had seen it earlier, like in a little bit of needless foreshadowing, and and you're like, oh, something's gonna happen with the bear trap. So they're basically hugging each other, chomped together in the world's largest bear trap, and Ives is like basically, they're both dying, and Ives is kind of impressed. He's kind of like, oh, nicely done. And he says to Boyd, he promises that if Boyd dies first, he's going to eat him. And he asks Boyd what he would do if Ives dies first. And then he tells Boyd, eat or die. And then after a couple of beats, he's like, eat or... in like the longest exhale sigh I've ever heard. It goes on for like 10 seconds or something, and then he dies. It's pretty great, actually. It's like you're hearing the Wendigo spirit leave his body or something. I don't know. It was cool. Martha shows up and sees the boys chomped together in the bear trap and just kind of is like, oh, and walks away. Boyd, instead of eating Ives, dies. He allows himself to die. The music swells, it's real dramatic. The theme comes back. It's all, it's heavy stuff. And then Martha just wanders off into the wilderness. The camera pulls up like over them, pulls back, and the movie is over. Yes.
Yeah.
It was a delight.
It was.
I really enjoy this movie a lot. It's a lot of fun. It pretty fast paced. It's got a couple slow moments. It's got some wonky storytelling, as we'd mentioned. The script is pretty bad. I mean, it's serviceable, but as far as like the action and the acting is fantastic. I mean, it's got a lot going for it, I thought. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, it's better than we make it sound whenever we're summarizing it. I feel like the way that we summarized it made it sound really hokey and unlovable, because it's not the kind of movie that's easy to retell.
Yeah.
Because so much of it is what's going on with the soundtrack and going on the screen that it's like if we were to do this with, with a Monty Python movie. Like it's not going to come across the right way.
Yeah, it's not going to be hilarious us talking about the jokes they tell.
Exactly. So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a blast. I was surprised at first. I was like, first time watching it, like first starting out, I was like, oh fuck, this is like some sort of fucking dances with wolves nonsense. I hate this. And then, like, it got going, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is fun. And then by the end, I was just totally on board, which is strange because I still think that the ending, the way they died, is the stupidest part of the whole fucking movie. That bear trap really makes me angry.
The bear trap is absurd. I mean, we've seen bear traps in movies a million times, and they're basically, the idea of a bear trap is to snare the bear's leg, not to chomp the entire fucking bear, which would be logistically really difficult. So yeah. It's so silly that they just happen to have this gigantic bear trap just perfectly sized for two dudes.
Yeah. And also that they had it set in a closet, like, I don't know. Also, even just the way they landed on it and the way that it closed on them doesn't make sense for it killing them, like, no. Because they're like missionary style, and so like he like dropped Ives. It's stupid. I didn't like that, but it's, other than that, like, the whole fight scene was great. The comedy was great. The ick factor was it was great. I gave this movie a 3.9 out of 5. It's almost turned over into 4, but it didn't quite get there just because of that. I think there were too many cooks in this kitchen, if you will, but it's a great watch, and I highly recommend everyone go have themselves a good time with this movie.
Right on. I've seen this movie many times, including back probably in 99 when it first came out. I always enjoy it. I've been through a lot in my life since 1999. But this movie has been, like, nailed it for me every time. And one of the things that I like about this movie is that it succeeds despite its problems. I mean, it has so many things holding it back, and somehow manages to just, I mean, she just did a great job, given that you can really tell that she was hampered, and somehow it's like it was good despite itself or something. I mean, the actors are very good, so I mean, they're some of the best in the business, so that really helps, helps overcome things like a shitty script and stuff like that. Having said that, man, I love this movie so much. I've rated it way too high. I don't even care. I gave it a 4.7.
Oh, nice!
Yeah, I really love this movie. It kind of holds like a special cultural spot for me in movie history, especially since I am not a big fan of a lot of 90s horror films, and this one, it's right in the tail end of the 90s, but it really hits for me. Wait, by the way, wasn't Final Destination 2 99 as well?
No, Final Destination 2 was, hold on, I'm scrolling, 2003. Oh,
that's right, it was in the 2000s.
Yeah,
that's right.
Trying to see.
Speaking of, I think 6 is supposed to come out this year, as a matter of fact. I saw that in somebody's list of stuff to come out. There's some interesting things coming, a lot of shit, a lot of unnecessary sequels. A new Scream, a new Saw, a new Final Destination. It's just like, come on, guys. Just whatever, dicks. By the way, speaking of, this just popped into my head, but speaking of Netflix, they just added It's Alive, I believe it's Larry Cohen's movie about the killer baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that movie is fucking great. And they had so much shit on Netflix, and I was just scrolling through, and I'm like, It's Alive? What the hell?
Netflix has turned into a really weird place.
Lots of Bollywood movies and shitty stuff.
It's like mostly shit. Like anything that comes out and it's like, oh yes, a Netflix original, like now you can count on it to be garbage.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. I mean, they do have a lot of good stuff in their back catalog, but unless you're a complete fucking masochist, you're not going to go looking for it because they make it almost impossible to find anything. Like even with your list of stuff that they present for you, it's like every time you pull it up, it's in a different fucking order. It's so annoying. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hate Netflix, but I watch it anyway.
Yeah. Even you can navigate it better in if you like do it on your computer in a browser. Yeah. Doing it on a TV is a complete nightmare. Like, especially if you're just trying to find something new to watch, because it wants to just keep feeding you the same things over and over again, and you have to rely on its stupid sliders. All of that can go fuck itself, to be quite honest.
Yeah, their algorithms are balls.
Yeah, balls. So 8.6 puts this movie directly between, just below it is Ben Wheatley's In the Earth at 8.5, and just above it is Don Coscarelli's Phantasm at 8.7.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, I'd put it in there.
Yeah. That's a nice little sandwich.
A nice little sandwich. And speaking of Ben Wheatley, I have two movies that I wanted to report on this week. One of which was the Meg 2, The Trench, directed by Ben Wheatley, and it is perhaps unsurprisingly a pile of shit.
Wow, what a shock.
Yeah, as a person who enjoys shark movies and it's just fucking shit. I hated everything about that movie.
Yeah, I know it's a money grab for him, but
oh yeah,
people pay attention to that shit. It's like, isn't that the guy that made Meg 2? Like that shit can hurt him too.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't write it. It was just, hey, you want to direct this movie? We'll pay you a bunch of money. He was like, yeah, please. So it's not like it's his project. I don't respect him less as an artist. I'm sure like his next like homegrown project will be great. It's just such a weird thing. Like I don't know what was going through the studio's mind where they were like, we need to get this guy to do it. It's just, I don't know. It was weird. Also, it looked terrible. Like, there were parts of it where it was just like, wow, that looks like garbage. That's whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, it's weird the way some directors will jump around. Like fucking David Gordon Green, who started out making no-budget indie movies that were really good, and then started making these stoner comedies, and some of those are kind of entertaining, or at least one of them was. Pineapple Express was fun, but...
oh, man.
But then he made the Halloween trilogy, which is contested as far as whether or not it's any good. And then he made the fucking abysmal Exorcist movie, which was so bad he's not coming back for the rest of them.
I saw that come through my feed. I was like, yep, good choice, my dude.
And he said some bullshit like, I'm going to be busy. I have to shoot something else. Bye.
Yeah, I have to wash my balls that day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, I don't care what the reason is. I'm glad you're not making the next movies, because that movie sucked dick. It's terrible.
Oh, speaking of exorcism, the other movie that I watched, El Conde, is the one about Pinochet is secretly a vampire, and a sex exorcism nun shows up to deal with him, and it is fucking awesome.
Is it? Really? Wow. Well, Ramon hated it, so that's interesting. I need to watch that. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh yeah, if you like your South American magical realism, this is top notch magical realism in cinema. I thought it was tremendous.
I do like that. That's cool. Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I'll definitely watch it then.
And I learned all about Operation Condor. I had no idea about Operation Condor because I'm ignorant, I guess. And now I know about it and horrified about the world.
I don't think I knew about Operation Condor either, so...
It's the whole thing with South America where they staged a overthrow of the existing governments, and America was involved, it was all terrible.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way Pinochet took over, and the whole situation with Allende was such a nightmare.
It's almost like everything's bad.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's all America's fault.
Yeah, we're there. How about you? Did you watch any cool new things or other not watch but media doing?
Yeah, doing. I finished, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Jesus Christ. That was good. Burped last time and sneezed on this one. The Society of the Snow, which I mentioned, that was great. What else did I see? My wife and I watched a few series. It was just a bunch of audiobooks for me. I mentioned that one, The Hunger by Almakatsu, which is about the Donner Party. That was really good. It's a supernatural twist on it, which was kind of cool. Very similar to Ravenous in as far as the idea, not the execution. I'm listening right now to a book called The Creeper, which is a kind of like a folk horror written by an Irish author named A.M. Shine, who is probably about to be pretty well known because his book, The Watchers, is going to be the next Shamalama Ding Dong movie.
Oh, good.
Yeah. The Watchers is a cool book. I like it a lot. I read a book called Lingun from a Chinese-Canadian author named Ai Jiang, and that was kind of like a supernatural story about, generations of a Chinese family who, end up emigrating to Canada. And so I guess it's a novella, but it was really good. Also read The Paleontologist by Luc Dumas, which was a very strange book about a paleontologist and a essentially haunted natural science museum in a small city. It was weird. It was all right. It was pretty good. And then the last one was a book called What Kind of Mother by the author Clay McLeod Chapman, who wrote a really well-known book called Ghost Eaters that I didn't really care for, but What Kind of Mother was an interesting story about a guy who loses his kid and wife and teams up with a woman who's basically a quote-unquote fortune teller just as a way to make money. She doesn't actually believe it, but then gets involved with this dude who's her old boyfriend from high school, and he believes his son is still alive even though he was found dead. And you find out why. It's a pretty emotional book, but it was good. So yeah, some good stuff out there.
Nice. You need to get an affiliate link for your audiobook service, and we need to be like putting that in the show notes so that you can get cash for recommending these books.
Yeah, no kidding. It's the same service, but when I signed up for it, it was called Scribd, and they decided, aside from like all the ebooks and audiobooks that they have, and they have a lot, they also do documents and other stuff that users can upload, things like articles, and it's really cool. But they split off so that Scribd is all that stuff, that the more academic-y stuff, and then all the books and audiobooks are now called under a service called Everand. Whatever, it's the same. Oh. It's the same service, but it's like $12 a month, and it's there's a ton of stuff. And then when I get tired of that, I just go to the Houston Public Library, and there's a shit ton of stuff you can check out there, and it's all free. So yeah,
nice.
It's great. It's a great service. I mean, you can sign up for these libraries anywhere basically on the internet and get a digital subscription, and then you can check out as many ebooks as you want. Read yourself to death.
Yeah, and then also there's a streaming service called Canopy with a K, and it's also through the library system, and it's just got tons of great movies and stuff on there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of international stuff and indie movies and art house stuff, and some
Buster Keaton.
Yeah, some big dollar movies too, but very very well curated and large collection of stuff. What say thee when? Okay, I'm sorry. What are you looking at picking for our next movie?
Our next episode will be coming out on the 4th of February, and as you all are aware, February is Black History Month, and we didn't do anything about it before, so I figured maybe we do it this time. We haven't featured a lot or any Black directors on this show, so I figured let's try it out. So for our next episode, we're going to be reviewing Nia DaCosta's 2021 requel of Candyman.
Oh, very nice. I thought about picking that one myself. Cool.
Yeah, have you seen it already?
I have.
Yes. Well, don't say anything.
It's a remake. Okay. Requel.
Yeah. It's also a sequel. It's
That's true.
It's it's special. But yeah, I think I'm also going to end up watching a lot of the other Candyman movies before we talk about it, just so I can say anything about all of those.
The original, I wasn't interested in it when it came out. It just didn't, I don't know. I think it just reeked of Hollywood excess to me. Not excess, but just Hollywood failure, So I just never watched it. And then, since I realized that I'm, living much longer than I thought I would originally, I have time to go back and watch movies like Candyman. And I love Candyman. That movie's awesome.
Yeah.
The original is a lot of fun. It's ridiculous, but I don't know. It's kind of a cool little movie.
I don't know. With the original, at times I really enjoy it. At other times I'm super bored with it. Sometimes it's like, oh my god, how much time are we going to spend watching a white woman feel menaced by black people? But it's fine, whatever.
Right.
But I've also never seen any of the sequels, so I'm interested to see what that whole franchise has in store. I'm guessing not greatness, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure it's diminishing returns, but that's to be expected. And there's sometimes a lot of fun to be mined in these shitty sequels. So.
Yeah. All right, so go watch the 2021 requel of the Candyman, and come back here in wax and listen to us talk about it to you.
Yeah, listen to us celebrate Black History Month, a la horror cinema in our case.
Yes, bees.
Absolutely. And, if I had to summarize this episode, I would say I'm sorry you all have to die.